Hello.
Hi everyone. Hey. So this is the Cine Journeys podcast. I am Jill Blake and I'm here with Aaron West. Hello, Aaron.
Hello, it's great to be here. I guess we should tell people this is a practice, or I don't want to say fake,
Yes,
but you're interviewing me, so probably most people that see this know that we own this. But
that's right.
I am the guest. So Jill
Yeah.
Blake, I have never met you before, so let's
No, this is
wipe
wow.
scene. Yes, and
Yeah. Yes. Wow. Aaron, it's so nice to finally meet you.
I've heard so much about you. You're like
Really?
one of my
Wow.
favorite people on earth.
Tell me about that real quick now.
Well, that's not what we're here
Um,
for, but I'll
no.
DM you. I'll sneak into your DMs.
Slide right into my DMs. That's
Okay,
wonderful.
I'll be
So
the guest. Hello,
okay, so
glad to be here.
hi guest, how are you?
I'm
Um,
fantastic.
this is we're just very serious people here on the Cine Journeys podcast. But I am very excited to have Aaron on because he is putting out a book on A24, the very popular film distributor slash studio-ish sort
Yeah,
of
conglomerate, cultural conglomerate.
conglomerate with
Yeah,
media conglomerate.
mhm.
And Aaron has been working on this book for quite some time, and he's putting that out. And we are super excited to hear more about this. And I know that there's a lot of cinephiles out there who love the movies that A24 is putting out and want to learn more about how A24 became A24.
Yeah,
So, Aaron, first of all, just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get talking about the book.
sure. Well, the short version. That's all we have is the short version. So I have a background in technology and business. The TLDR is I've done some tech work and I've done some writing for business and for technology on those subjects. But as a hobbyist, I've also written about film. I have a podcast about Criterion. I've had a blog about Criterion. So I've been, and I have a degree in history and film studies, basically. So I've been in this world for a good 20 years. I did review movies. I do have a Rotten Tomatoes profile that's mostly link rot. Basically, I think most of the websites I wrote for. So I this that background and our company, we have this company called Cine Journeys that I know we're pretending we don't, but we do. So can't hide that. That is basically prompted really just the cinema discovery uh, mindset has really propelled me to focus on a certain topic, a long form topic, which ended up being A24. I'm sure we'll get into that, but that is
Mhm.
my background. That's how I
Awesome.
came to look at modern cinema.
So really, what you're saying is what Cine Journeys does, which, if I'm understanding this correctly, because I'm not I'm the interviewer here,
Yeah.
is that the idea of diving into particular subject, right, or a film, and so you are basically applying that to this phenomenon. You're basically arguing that this is a
Yeah.
phenomenon, this distributor.
Yeah, in the book, I call it a new wave. I mean, it's in the title, the A24 New Wave.
Mhm.
So I say that we're in a modern new wave movement, and to get there, we did have a program, a programmed what we call a journey, which was a deep dive into A24, looking, and I use that to workshop the book a little bit. But
Great.
I've we've had our own programming. We're basically a film club. We have classes. We're a learning management system. But I've on the side, while still programming and with this person named Jill, sharing responsibilities to host these events and classes and club events. I've been also working on the side, kind of with that
Mhm.
same journey, the exploration spirit of trying to learn about A24. And so in the process, I very thoroughly researched and a book that I really enjoyed writing. Or
So
should we say books?
books, that sounds exciting. So my question, so we kind of have this idea of what uh was driving you to to dive into a subject, but
Yeah.
why A24? What was your what kind of called you to that particular
Well, I
subject?
I love movies. I love cinema, and but what's interesting is based on my taste profile. I'm very much into classic cinema. I'm very much into international classic cinema, and but I do watch, a good portion of the new releases every year. I do like to get caught up into award season and watch the nominees. I'm into Cannes, and all the discourse around film that goes on from year to year. So it's not like foreign modern film is foreign to me, but through the Criterion podcast, through my studies, through my writing, it's basically been classic cinema. So at some point, you see enough films, and of course, A24 started 2011, 2012 vicinity. You see the common DNA, you see their branding, and one thing I talk about in the book is that they deliver these cinematic experiences that resonate with you, which are very familiar to cinematic experiences that I've had with classic films that are some of my favorite films of all time. So what I saw was a common DNA with new wave movements in history, the ones that I've studied, and common circumstances, common we'll say battles that these filmmakers have
Mhm.
had with, say, the industry, say with trends, with culture. So really, what I found, and I had two YouTube videos, one with Mark Herney, one with Rodney Wade, where I basically used them as a sounding board, basically just to see if this idea or this thought process held water.
Mhm.
And they just listened to me. Those are out there. You can find them, and I found that they did. And so I basically just started writing, and through the writing process, there was more discovery, a lot more researching, especially, and I really found that it's there. However, and
Mhm.
I don't know if you're going to ask about the two books, but I really found that the new wave era of A24, the primary innovation was really the first, say, half of the company's lifespan to this point, whereas
Mhm.
the 2019, the pandemic changed everything, and so that's why this is divided, because it's really a different story, and we can get to
Mhm.
that. Um,
Yeah, so I was gonna ask you about that, but going back to, talking about A24 creating, these cinematic experiences. So as they're launching, you're saying this is around 2011-ish.
2012 is
This
what,
is
yeah, officially, yeah.
2012. So now we're getting into the era of streaming.
Mhm.
So can you kinda talk about how A24 has how they've kind of navigated that space,
Mhm.
and how they've, because you still see that there's these they're still putting their movies out in the theaters, right?
Right, yeah.
And so if you could speak to kind of how they're navigating this kind of change in the media landscape.
Well, in a large part, not exclusively, they've been very, very savvy when it comes to marketing, and when it comes to positioning themselves as a company, and their brand spotlight. Um, the timing has been fortuitous for them, because
Mhm.
their first films actually were released in 2013, but they started in 2012. But they were, aligned with the rise of the streaming platforms.
Mhm.
So yes, Spring Breakers, a glimpse inside the mind of Charles Swan III. These early films, Ginger and Rosa, The Bling Ring. These went to festivals. They played theaters. They got some of these into wide theaters. But at some point, and this is actually where a crucial time period for them, they started making deals with streaming services, and they were. I don't know if I'd say every one of these was a great deal, but it was great for them at the time. It was what they needed at the time. So I do have a chapter. It's chapter 13. It's called "We're Going Streaming," which is a pun on the old school "We're Going Streaking," which is very non-new wave, but it's just fun. Uh, but the big one was DirecTV. So DirecTV was trying to become a streaming service, and they had this agreement with A24 to get their films in on the A24 service first. So that it was part of an acquisition and sort of distribution partner, and a lot of the movies didn't get as much of a theatrical release. Some did. The Witch was actually one of those. And it actually got into theaters despite that agreement, because it was very, very strong. But yeah, they've been ahead of the game, is basically where they have established themselves on streaming, and they've adapted. And that's where, as the pandemic, streaming has really blown up through the pandemic, and they've still been a step ahead of the game, and still are,
Mhm.
actually. So their movies are everywhere today.
So that's because we've seen so many changes, and you're talking about like DirecTV, tried to get into the streaming game. I mean,
Right.
we've seen how many companies have tried to get into it and then quickly fall out of it. And I think we've learned, I mean, even the giants, which I won't even name names, but even some of the giants that have gone into streaming, they're not succeeding at it because ultimately it's about tech, right? And so the
Yeah.
companies that are doing really well at streaming are essentially tech companies that have gotten
Hmm.
into content as a sidebar, right? So A24 is actually at and I would imagine you've covered this, and readers can
Yeah. Yeah.
learn about this, is that they've somehow found a way to kind of navigate both sides of the artistic and the more technical side, and striking deals with these big streamers. Um, and also, I would say that their films have come up into the kind of the memification, right, of film, and because a lot of the images, even if you haven't seen an A24 film, like the images, right, are
Hmm.
memed to death. So I would imagine that that is kind of a positive. That they've definitely become part of the pop culture lexicon, so to speak. And I imagine you touch on that some as well.
A lot, actually. And so we
Hmm.
talk a lot about the individual films and the filmmakers. And if you just look at the filmmakers in their early window, you have, there's a lot of men, but you have Barry Jenkins, you have, well, Greta Gerwig is a big one, Lanthimos, Ari Aster, Robert
Hmm.
Eggers, I could go on. Um, but they have leveraged their marketing and their targeting, and their social media to maximize the impact of their marketing. And this is where I do talk about all that stuff you just mentioned, in terms of the theatrical process. It's a book about A24, but it's also a book about
Right.
just how movies are seen, how they get to the
Hmm.
people. And that's a very, very complicated. We might think we understand the nuances to VOD,
Right.
POV, and these first look agreements. There's a whole bunch of agreements I didn't expect to get into that are in the book.
Yeah.
But really, they target a certain demographic, mostly the younger Gen Z millennial demographic. They haven't always, but
Hmm.
they have found that they are effective at creating viral events through their films, like you're mentioning, that live and are exposed to people that are chronically online. And that's often the younger generations. It's not exclusively, but yeah, that's another area in which they've been lucky in that they also became established and again savvy with their marketing as these companies rose and grew. The social media companies as well. 2012 was a very different social media landscape, and
Right.
their Instagram, especially TikTok, all these, they were early adopters. And that's one thing
Mhm.
you cannot accumulate millions of followers. You can buy them, but you're not going to get the value. But they have, on every platform, they have followers, and they're able to actually minimize their expenses to create
Right.
viral moments. We've seen that with Marty Supreme. How much Marty Supreme have you seen on the internet? That's the
Right.
answer. That I'll answer your question to a question with a question. That's not expensive for them.
Right. Well, and you saying that they were early adopters. I mean, now if you start a social media account, it, getting those
Everybody's
numbers
behind.
is
Yeah.
it's impossible.
Yeah.
So they were really pioneers in that sense, that they were adopting all of this early on, and they're reaping the benefits now. So so uh, another question I have for you is, as you're researching this and you're kind of in this world, what was something that really surprised you, in your, and if that's too, if I just totally put you on the spot with that, we can come back to it. But you were a fan of their movies, right? You were a
A
fan of
lot of them.
everything
Yeah.
they were doing. But something that just kind of, and it doesn't have to be like it shocked you or shook you to your core, but what is something that just you weren't expecting?
I was not expecting. So again, I knew the movies. I knew a lot of the movies. I
Hmm.
filled in those blanks, and I've seen every A24 movie there is, and most everything. content, period, including the TV. It's an endless rabbit hole, but there's a lot out there. I mean, there's a lot that surprised me.
Mhm.
That's the spirit of research, coming at it from a historical
Sure.
perspective. I wanted to make sure I understood every facet of every aspect of the characters, or the characters. See, the individuals involved, and this is where I think focusing on the creators themselves really helped, because
Mhm.
A24 is a company, and again, a very strong. I keep using the word savvy, but very strategically minded,
Mhm.
and does an excellent job at what getting films to people. That's ultimately what they do as a distributor and a producer later. Um,
Mhm.
what I think interested me and surprised me most is coming from a cinema tradition, going to film school. You know, we're used to these masters like John Ford, Orson
Mhm.
Welles, William Wyler. I could go on with a whole host of cinematic influences that have been seen as the canon of film
Mhm.
resources. Well, every creator is different. For example, Yorgos Lanthimos is a lot more influenced by Peter Greenaway and the Czech New Wave than, say, Barry Jenkins or the Safdie brothers, although they like those films too. But
Mhm.
um, but the influences, and this is part of the new wave concept, is there are some singular influences, or I should say several multiple influences that are they're in common. So it's in the DNA of these filmmakers, which I call the new wave filmmakers.
Mhm.
So John Cassavetes is everywhere. Like, he
Right.
is, of course, a master to you and me. He's a recent-ish in the context of film history. He's a recent
Right.
filmmaker, but almost everybody has been touched by him, and he's cited by a lot of people. Mike Lee, British social realism, Ken Loach, these two also are very frequently cited by filmmakers. Um, that's kind of like, there's kind of like a core DNA of filmmakers, and then with the second book, we get into more of the diverse influences, the queer
Right.
cinema, female cinema, Chantal Ackerman, Agnes Varda. They're not as much in the first book, but they will be in the second, because they have become more transformative on modern cinema in like,
Mhm.
post Oscars So White. So that was surprising, in that, sure, they all love Casablanca. Who doesn't?
Mhm.
Um, they all love It's a Wonderful Life. Well, maybe not all. Some people don't like that movie. I don't
Right.
particularly love the movie, and Citizen Kane, I think Citizen Kane's a masterpiece, but these are not. It is not the film school 101 syllabus that has
Right.
influenced these people, and like the French New Wave, they didn't like certain adaptation filmmakers, so
Mhm.
they liked the people that innovated, and a lot of those were actually Hollywood.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and some of them, the ones that aren't as influential now. So every generation reacts to something, and I
Yeah.
would say this group has as well. That was shocking and really exciting, interesting to me, and I hope
I
it's
think
interesting in the
that's
book.
I
Yeah.
think that's great because it sounds like you set out with this kind of thesis, right? That
Yeah.
A24 is a movement, and you knew that you were gonna be tying it to
Hmm.
what's come before. But it's so rewarding when you go, "Yeah, of course it's connected to what comes before," but then when you really get into it and then seeing, "No,
Yeah.
it's
It
really
really is.
there."
Yeah.
I think
And the
that's really
sources.
fascinating. Mhm.
Yeah, that's another thing too, is that these directors do a lot of press. You
Mhm.
don't Cassavetes talked a lot. He did plenty of press. He some
Right.
hilarious press, actually,
Right.
some legendary classic press. But the thing is, these directors do Q&As, they do interviews, they do podcasts, they do videos, they do junkets. They promote their films a lot, and they end up saying a
Mhm.
lot of the same things. But what I found is actually the times in which the sources that I used were when they were more had their guard down, and just
Mhm.
really talking about their passion for cinema. And I used all sorts of sources, but one that I found was really valuable was commentaries. Not all of
Mhm.
them were terrific. Sometimes they just goof off and have fun, but sometimes, like Barry Jenkins, for example, him talking about his movies and each shot for shot. I mean, imagine if you had that with like Orson Welles. Imagine if you had Orson
Right.
Welles talking about Hamlet. or Citizen Kane or Ambersons. Yeah, he would sip some tea with spill some tea with
Of
Ambersons, I'm
course.
sure, or really anything. But yeah, that's a great way to find that, and that was part of the
Mhm.
discovery. I just really enjoy hearing and researching their passion for film, and then that went into the book because that's what the
So I
subject,
was gonna ask you
that's what it
about
is.
your
Yeah.
process, and so it sounds like really just firsthand accounts with all of these interviews and commentaries and things really
Mhm.
kind of gave you the foundation for this. So as you're writing this book, at what point did you figure out this is going to become two books?
Actually, can I just rewind and get the first part of
Yeah,
your statement slash
yeah, of
question?
course.
I'm not, well, okay. I just want to clarify that it's not just, there is a very large, wide array of sources, and I would, if I were to put a number on it, I would say probably 2 to 3,000. A lot of online sources. That's the nice thing about these filmmakers talking so much. But a lot of books. There aren't a lot of modern cinema books, but there are several books, and of course the sources. I read just about all the screenplays, so there was. I'm not saying that to to fluff up my, but it took a lot of work, and I've kind of made some comparisons to like Robert Caro. I'm not saying I am him, but this was a thoroughly researched book, and I was very proud of what I found. Um, and I sorry, audience. Jill is sharing something with me in the chat, but if you don't mind just re-asking the second part of that
Yes.
question.
So,
I
well,
heard it, but yeah.
so about your process, but then I was the second part is like, at what point did you decide
Yeah.
that this needed to be two books,
Well,
or did
let's
you
go back.
know the whole time?
I didn't know. So let's just assume that it's the 1960s or 70s, and I'm trying to understand French New Wave. Of course, French New Wave is maybe Czech New Wave because that was less understood. Maybe in the 80s and 90s, and just trying to get into the filmmaker's mind. Um, that's what I try to do. But also when writing, it's what's most important is what you include, but what you exclude. They have a saying, kill your darlings. They're not saying actually go out and murder people. They're saying edit, cut what's less interesting. And to answer that question is I found that, so with the 2012 to 2018, I found that there's a real absence of material out there about that's been written about these filmmakers. And while I'm not going to write a book about Greta Gerwig or Barry Jenkins, Sean Baker as part of the new wave, I wanted to give them the proper attention. So while these aren't books within books, these are stories. And probably in many cases, the most substantial stories that have been written about stories, histories that have been written about these filmmakers. And so what I found is basically, I found when I dumped everything into a Word document and adjusted the font size, which was smaller than what my eyes see, I found that I had written 1,000-page book. And when I looked at what to
Okay.
cut, I wrote 1,000-page book. When I looked at what to cut, it was like, what? I can't cut Barry Jenkins. I mean, I did cut a lot. I can't talk about. There's approximately 200 films. I think they'll actually officially broach or break the 200 barrier this year. In 1,000 pages, that's 5 pages per movie, but you can't give that much attention. However, when you look at the table of contents, you see these filmmakers. There's really none that should be cut. So to
Right.
really do the proper justice, and this is again where I get to Robert Caro. He wrote 4 volumes of books about Lyndon Baines Johnson, LBJ. Don't worry, A24 fans, there is no LBJ in the book. This is not that type of book, but it needs to exist. And
Hmm.
with the company Cine Journeys, our mantra has been: we built what we wanted to exist. I wrote what I wanted to exist, and I wrote
Hmm.
the first half, which is the new wave thesis, is what we're calling it. It
Hmm.
essentially is proven, I think. I'm just reporting it, documenting it. But then what's even more important is that you can't just say, yes, you can say that everything everywhere all at once is an endpoint when it comes to a lot of these origins. But we're talking about different generations with a lot of these modern films. We're talking about different voices that have been championed. And one stat in 2024, I believe it was, actually in 2025, the organization GLAAD gave A24 an award for being for including queer characters to a certain barrier. And this is an award that is impossible to get. So, and it's not just the directors, it's the characters, it's what's represented on screen for people to see. And that's in the book, in the second book. But it was important, as I mentioned, like Ackerman, Varda, Barbara Loden, queer cinema. These stories need to be told, and that it's a different story from 2019, especially 2020 on, in terms of understanding true modern cinema and the representation. And initially in the book, I had a chapter that was all about representation. And you can't tokenize representation. That's actually, so that's essentially the second book. And also we see the imitators, the A24 business model is now established. It's what we call a new normal. And so it's been copied. And so there are other people. Neon and Mubi cannot go back in time to start an Instagram account, but they have found that where A24 is innovated, that some of these techniques can be borrowed, and that's further the new wave, but it's also further representation. You look at what Neon's library, it's a very different type of cinema than what we saw during the Miramax Focus Features, Sony Pictures Classics years. So yeah, that was probably a longer answer than you were looking for.
No, that was great.
It's 1,000 pages, and so they'll probably be roughly 500 pages each, but they'll read fast. They'll read very, very fast. I think people will be interested.
So one thing, and this may come out of nowhere, but I do think it's like the elephant in the room of the world we live in, the room. Let's talk about AI and about
I knew when I said 1,000 pages.
And we don't have to get into the full thing because it's that could be like a whole other interview. But I do think that there's so much. I mean, even if you go on Amazon or I mean, let me back up and just say that now we're getting to the point where like journalism is, under attack, and film criticism has been, it's been dwindling for over a decade. With all the positives that the internet has brought us, that's one negative, is that we're seeing like the death of print media. We're seeing journalism is not valued the same way. And, even when you're looking up sometimes you look up a review online and it may be credited to someone, but it's not a real person. It's clearly AI generated. And so, you're talking about this, oh my God, there's this 1,000-page book. I wonder.
So thank you for asking that, because I do want to address that. Yeah. When people hear that I wrote 1,000, no, it's been a lot of time and a lot of nights. And this is where we can't, we can break character a little bit. You know me, and you know how much I work. I have a very, very, I'm very productive, I will say. And actually I'm not going to say I'm anti-AI. I'm very skeptical now. What I said,
we're speaking generative AI. This is when we're talking AI, we're not getting into the concept of automation or anything. We're talking about AI creating something from pieces that it's essentially stolen from. That's what we're talking about.
So let's bookmark the AI, because I do want to come back to it. But I'll start with a point blank answer, in that not a single word was written with AI. So
we can just, that's the statement right now.
I'll elaborate in a second. But I do want to go back to how you preface that question about the death of print media, and I actually want to challenge that a little bit, because this is another thing to your earlier question about what shocked me and surprised me, was just how good print, online, and film writing there has been. The thing is, there are probably thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of outlets, especially when you count blogs. And it's been, I think there's been a change in, where it comes from. So it's not just these 20, 30 big newspapers across the
Right.
country. A lot of them are still there, but that's what's been changed. Maybe somebody going for a career in film criticism today cannot expect the salary. That's not even a maybe. You can't expect to have it via, most of it's part-time criticism. But I actually even mentioned in the acknowledgments that um, my book is, if it's good, I think it's good, but it's as good as the level of online criticism and discourse that's happening right now, which I think is a very, very high level. Now, not every single article blog is as good as others. There's one I won't call it out, that I purposely put in there. That's a bad a bad article, and there's also some user reviews. But the thing is, a lot of times those are valuable too. There's one chapter I won't mention where it's basically anchored by a letterbox review from somebody whose life was changed by watching a movie. So you can't. It's documented on Letterbox. Thank you, Letterbox, for existing.
Right.
But somebody in the Washington Post or New York Times can't really speak to how it affects, and especially when we're talking about diverse and inclusive
Right.
material representation, how the person that's being representative actually processes that. So print media may be dead. Online media, or maybe shouldn't say dead, challenged. It exists.
Right.
But
Right.
there's more, kind of like A24 is able to find more homes for their movies, their filmed content. There's more avenues for online criticism to reach people. So yeah, love lots of people I cited are great people. Some of them we know,
Awesome.
but most we don't. Uh, AI.
So
So
AI.
what's funny is, when, as you know, I've been at this a while, and when I started working on the book, again, saying that there's a big dearth of content. There's empty recesses where writing should exist, and when I started, AI was, I'm not going to say it was a fledgling technology, because it was pretty well established, but I think at that time it was, and this is only like, not even a couple years ago, it was seen as more like a novelty. I know when I,
Mhm.
I first started playing with ChatGPT, I was like, trying to put like Elton John lyrics for about modern political stuff, fun stuff,
Mhm.
seeing how it would mimic some of my favorite artists or performers. I did not conceive that it could possibly write a book at that time, and
Mhm.
I tested it. In fact, there are a couple chapters where it comes up organically. A big one is Ex Machina, because
Mhm.
the Alex Garland was inspired by a professor at King's College by the name of Murray Shanahan, who was doing AI research at the time, and talking about. And this was before AI. What we see is, it's actually large language models, as you know,
Mhm.
LLMs. But he was thinking about, just true consciousness of
Right.
machines, and so he inspired Garland to make this movie about a conscious machine, very, very different from what we see as AI now. And
Right.
Shanahan now, 10 years later, by the way, around the time of the film, they didn't think they'd see any type of version of AI in their lifetime. A lot of them actually said that. That's in the book. Shanahan now is basically talking to ChatGPT and seeing if they can understand their own existence. It's very fun stuff. Some of that's in the book, but mostly not. Um, but the thing is, the first off, if AI wrote a book, a 1,000-page book on A24, and right now in 2026, it would be dog shit. It would be terrible. Um, but it is out there, and one thing I've been looking for sources, as I mentioned, the exhaustive research I've done. I wanted sources, I wanted books, and so look, as you mentioned, just looking through Amazon.com. So looking for a book about Barry Jenkins, it probably exists. Ari Aster, there's maybe a couple self-published books, that are, some
Mhm.
are good, some are better than others. There've been a lot of term papers written, but there wasn't a lot of others.
Mhm.
And I won't mention the name, but kind of recently I was looking for a later chapter, or actually during the editing phase, I was looking again at a filmmaker, and all of a sudden I saw they had a lot of books out there. And when I say books, I'm saying Amazon listings. And
Right.
the reason I'm not mentioning the name is because I'm not going to accuse people of writing AI books, but but I think that's very likely where those are coming from, and they're selling them on Amazon for $2.99, and they're probably not good. There might be a time when which they are good, but the big thing, and this is just my personal, we will say personal politics, personal ethics, is I do have a lot of thoughts about the environmental concerns, and basically I don't want my book to cost a small village their water supply is
Right.
essentially where I stand. Now, I don't, but on the other hand, especially with online research, AI is part of our lives now. It's everywhere. Google is AI. You can turn it off, but
Right.
Google is AI. And I do think that AI is, there are use cases. There are
Mhm.
ways in which we can use it. I have a cut on my hand, and the first place it started bleeding, and the first place I went to was ChatGPT, basically saying, "Do I need to go to a hospital?" First off, ChatGPT told me I needed to go to the hospital. What I found out that it was solvable by a couple of band-aids. So that shows that it's only as good as what you give it. But but sometimes there is a use for it. In terms of research, I think maybe eventually, maybe sometimes, sometime it could be a good research tool. Maybe it's probably better than it was when I started. But yeah, to alleviate and circle back to my original answer, this was not written with AI, and I'm glad actually. I'm glad I
Yeah.
didn't have to start now and that be a temptation. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely permeated every part of our lives, and so it's good to kind of set the record straight on that. That has not permeated this book. So, I guess
I'm a
kind of
person.
the last question here
Call me
for
Eva. Sorry,
you is
Ava.
when, how, where will the
Mhm.
book be available? And yeah, give us a,
That's
and
a
is there anything around the book that is that will be available, like like promotional stuff? I
mhm.
see the art prints behind you. I'm assuming that has to do with the book. So kind of this is the part of the thing where
Yeah,
like
this was a
I
loaded
know
question.
where
Yes.
it's a very loaded question, and I'm just trying to act like I don't know what the answer is.
Well, funny that you mentioned that. So again, when I said that we built this company, we built what we wanted to exist. I wrote the book that I wanted to exist, but I wrote the book not for this reasoning, but I wanted to build the. I could shop an A24 book. This book, as it exists right now, would major publishers would love to get their hands on it, and I could probably make a lot of money if I just wanted to say, "Hey, Simon and Schuster, top of my head, do you want to put out my A24 book?" They would probably say yes, and give me a lot of money. But we are putting it out on our own imprint. So Sin and Journeys Press. We'll be doing a lot more. That's not for this conversation, but yes, that'll be where the book is put out. You could call it self-publishing, and we are using I guess the headway, kind of like the online criticism.
Mhm.
Some of the innovations, we'll say, in online media, we are using some of the innovations in print media and book media and literary media to build our press company, our publishing company on top of this. So this is the first book. That is the A24 New Wave, and it should be out around the April-May frame. We will have a street date. The big thing, and then the second one will, which the working title is the A24 New Normal. It's already written. That's part of the 1,000-page book. It'll have to be adjusted and edited to frame what in which the world in which it exists, which is more inclusive. I'll actually probably add like a Chantel Ackerman chapter and a few others to
Mhm.
provide the necessary context. But it will be out next year, probably spring 2027 or so. And we think it'll be a very, very good book. It'll be probably the most. This is not me being hyperbolic. I just think because I've looked for these, I think it'll be the most comprehensive modern book about modern cinema, current book about modern cinema. Um, the thing is, we also built a website and we built a learning management system. However, the web we built this in a way that it's modular. We can really use this for in so many, and we have used this in so many different ways. Almost if you can think it, we can do it. And so there is a companion website. Right now it's cinejourneys.com/A24 book. And that's where you can pre-order it. That's also there. We'll get into like the access and how you can receive access, but there will be a digital component because I think that the 1,000 pages there is some there are some darlings I will have to find homes for. They'll go on to this online, and also I'm going to keep working on this. So this is not the end of my research into A24 or modern cinema. I was actually thinking about writing a neon book, and and I don't think it's there yet, so I'm not going to. So if anybody wants to write a neon book, go ahead. That will, however, be they will be prominent in the A24 new normal. But there will be a lot of stuff that won't fit because I found that I found my voice for writing cinema, and I
Right.
found that there's more. There's also a lot of research. I'm looking around my house, and there's lots of little fun things. Part the merch. We didn't talk about the merch, but they're marketing. This is not A24, but this is Begonia. Um, so there's lots of little knickknacks that we'll be sharing. So yeah, I think people will want to get that digital access. And then I can't announce anything yet, but at some point, my next book, which is not A24 related, will be announced. I think probably this year, maybe even in a few months. We'll see. But that's a topic I think people that
All
will
right.
really excite people, and we expect others will kind of like how we're walking in the footsteps of other creators. I think other people will walk in our footsteps and find that this is a new modern online uh,
Right.
available platform to get to that goes beyond pulp and paper. So
Right. Well, and it's just showing that as things go, we have to evolve with it to keep the art and the criticism of that art alive. And I think that also just builds into the thesis of what you're saying here with A24. So, um, yeah, this was fantastic. I'm really looking forward to the book. And so again, you can go to cinejourneys.com/A24 book for the updates regarding publication and how you can get your hands on that. And yeah, this was fantastic. Can't wait to read it.
that's great. All right, thanks, Jill.